Cynthia Renee's unique perspective offers gem-seeking clients a rare and flawless experience. Cynthia combines the scientific training of a geologist, I love geology by the way, love it, and the insight of a world traveler and the creative instinct of a designer. After more than 2 decades developing her expertise, Cynthia has become a legendary leading authority on gemstones and jewelry. The go-to source, I love this, for the world's elite level gemstone collectors and for their novice collectors who wish to develop their eye for gems. She works personally with each client, whether she travels the world in search of a specific stone or to create a meaningful piece of jewelry to highlight a stone. So Cynthia, I love geology by the way, and rocks, oh my gosh. I believe your rocks are in the store and all your gems are in the store for us to come and see, right?
Quite a many of them.
Quite
yes.
a many. So what I would suggest is as your day goes on, just to learn and see these gemstones and touch them and be able to look at the color they have and maybe just walk away with something you might know that I didn't know there were 10 other gemstones more important than a diamond.
10?
At least.
Well, I could count it. It depends on what you call important. If you mean rare, more rare, yes.
Yes.
More beautiful, in my bias, yes.
Yes. I had no idea. In all your travels, you've gone to numerous gemstones mines all over the world. Now you did this yourself.
Right.
You've been in the mines.
Right.
Tell us about that. Was it dangerous?
You know, I suppose it's dangerous, but I always liked that. Like growing up, you know, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I wanted adventure. I wasn't so interested in who I was going to marry or I want to make, you know, be a millionaire like the guy on Gilligan's Island. I wanted adventure. So for me, it's a perfect fit. I love it. It's extraordinary.
Was it like Indiana Jones? Was it like, did it go deep into
these? Oh, it's much better than that. Like when I was doing my undergrad thesis here in San Diego, there's a tourmaline mine not that far from here. I'd go back in it and it's dark. There's water on the ground. You hear the men working out there and I'd be doing my orientation of making a map out there and looking at the geology. And like there'd be an area where they pulled the rocks down and there would be eyeless newts, you know, that they found underneath the ground who didn't need eyes. Or once the guys thought that they were gonna, you know, I guess they forgot about me up there doing my geology and they blasted. So it had many blasts that went off of dynamite, I think about 10, and they left. So, and my battery ran out on my headlamp. So you know, it's a good chance to be able to use and find your own wisdom through taking some risk. I mean, not reckless, but some risk. And I had to find my way out, like of the dark. Now, have you ever been underneath ground and seen what dark is? It's much more dark than if you just turn the lights out here. It's an extraordinary thing.
Were you ever scared?
Sometimes, you know, you get a little scared,
but
I just talked myself
thing that ever
out
happened?
of it. Scary. I don't go hysterical scary, you know. They make me more mad. Like once I was in an emerald mine and we had to be lowered down on an inner tube that was attached to a cable and it was cranked on down like a bucket in a well and it went through a water table. So it's like you're lowered down through the water and at the bottom there's a lot of water like up to your shins and so forth. So the guy who owned the mine was trying to impress us and the only light he had in the mine was from a big electrical cord that came from the top and he had a light bulb in it. So we're walking through the area and it's really slippery and dark and we were having to cross an area where the water's darker. And I said to my friend there, oh, be careful, look, he might slip and fall into the water. So we let him pass and then we passed. So we got to the other side and asked him, you know, in Spanish, have you ever thought what would happen if you dropped that light bulb in the water? And the Brazilians are so happy, you know. He said, oh, don't worry, it would be fine. Don't worry, the light bulb would be fine, you know.
Oh
so
my gosh.
It's scary, you could be electrocuted, but
yes.
There's, you know.
But did you find beautiful emeralds while you were there?
Not any particular beautiful ones at that day.
Right.
What happens is that they find the beautiful ones and they, you know, you don't pull beautiful things out of the ground all the time and they save them and then when you come they want you to go in, you know, to their office and look at things. But when we were inside the mine we pulled out emeralds but not gemmy quality.
Oh my gosh. Since you viewed these mines firsthand, what's your opinion on sustainability and fair trade within this gemstone industry?
Well, that's a complicated aspect. Now, you could look at diamonds, and diamond is one market pretty much, except there's, you know, colored diamonds, but their supply and demand is pretty modulated and has been controlled by De Beers and then the Russian company that sells more of dollar volume, quantity of diamonds now. But with colored gemstones, there's not one market. There's so many different kinds of colored gemstones, so that's to even take the top 10. You can't control and then you don't get the money for them, and there isn't the demand for them like there is for diamonds. So everything is very small scale. I started my business as a colored gemstone dealer, and I belong to the American Gem Trade Association. I'm on their board, and we're a group of ethically bound dealers. We sign an ethical pledge every year, and a gem dealer is going to be hard pressed to have 5 people working in their office. Right. So it's very small scale, and we go out to these areas, and the mining is very small scale. It's families or fathers or, you know, who are looking in riverbeds or who are mining something that's small scale. It's not a large mechanized type situation like it is for diamonds or...
Well, I think that's an interesting question because I didn't know this, but from our pearl diver, we learned that Mikimoto controls the pearl industry. Pretty much, he is the guy.
Well, a certain area of the pearl industry.
A South Sea pearl. He's the guy, and De Beers is your diamond sort of lord.
Yeah, but since Russia opened up diamond areas there, like I was just reading a statistic today that De Beers has the higher dollar volume, but the Russian has the higher quantity volume.
Are there any politics associated with any specific diamonds that are unusual?
Well, I don't specialize in diamond. I specialize in colored gemstones.
In gemstones, right? Are there any politics with gemstones?
Well, there's always politics, especially like you go to the African countries and things are small scale. There's a lot more graft there, or at least it's more overt than what you would see here. So yes, I mean, yes.
So let's ask the famous question. You were a little girl.
A little girl.
And you started to think, I'd like to study, how did you get to this incredible, authentic place of understanding the world of gemstones?
Well, I used to sit with my grandmother, and do any of you, like at my age, where you would read those Time Life books on like ecology and
Did you have the
nature?
boxes of rocks?
Yes, and I used to look at the globe with my grandmother, and I said, Grandma, look, it looks like South America could be tucked into Africa, and these could be put apart, and this was before plate tectonics. And Grandma said, well, it looks like that, but I don't think that's the case. But I was always very interested in that, and valleys and rocks, and growing up around here, why is there a rock pile here? Why is there a valley there? So I grew up to be able to figure that out. Geology is what really called me. I tried something else first,
so did you have to take geology classes?
Yes, I went to San Diego, at San Diego State, who has a great geology department because we have proximity. There's no trees all over everything or ground cover carrying everything up.
So what's your favorite gemstone to work with?
Oh, Lordy.
Can you pick one?
In life, if you would ask me my favorite ice cream, I'd have just as much a hard time because there's so many good ice creams. So I tend to like
but
the
I don't know,
gemstone.
there's always one favorite that you get more than once.
I'd say there's 2 camps here. One of them is there's a gemstone that's gaining in some popularity now. It's called spinel. And red spinel to me is just such a hunka burning love. It is just so red and like battery powered and beautiful. And since most people haven't heard of it, it's relatively, you know, low price compared to its desirability and rarity, you know, is still relatively low. But still you could, you know, go up to like 20,000 a carat. But if it's equivalent ruby, it'd be hundreds of thousands. And then I like the gemstones that are dispersive, that break up the light into its rainbow power. So there's some rare gem called sphene that I really like a lot.
Wow. Now, do you have some of those here that we can see?
Some red spinel, yes. And do I have sphene? I probably have sphene. I'm sure I do.
Now, are you sourcing? Let's talk a little bit about your sourcing. Do you still go out into the mines today?
Yeah, but this is kind of like people think, oh, you go out to the mines and buy things. You go out to the mines because it's interesting and you want to have context, but you know, there's so much misrepresentation and fraud that can occur out there. You're in a dark mine, things are dirty. So you might go out there and look at things, but then you really do your negotiation and handling of money in an office, someplace where you can control the lights and the, you know, science.
So you have suppliers really supplying you.
Right.
Are they cut? Are they already cut for you, or you're deciding the cuts?
They're both. Like some countries like Sri Lanka, they don't allow export of rough because they want their own domestic cutting operations to flourish. But a lot of the cuts would be very lackluster and more primitive. So I would have to be one of my things to think about whether I could recut this gem to bring out the brilliance. Other things I would cut from the rough.
Now, as just a regular consumer, I have the fortunate chance to go to the gemstone trade fair. I gotta tell you, I've never seen anything like this in my life. There's little triangle stacks all throughout this, right, Hilda? All throughout this gemstone store. And people are going in there and they're looking at their stones. All those look like they're pretty, no, some weren't cut, but they're mostly cut. Hundreds and thousands of stones. You would think that 20s, 30s, hundreds, not hundreds of thousands. I mean, piles, sapphires, emeralds.
But that's all very commercial quality.
That's the question. So there's the question. There's something I learned there that I'd never heard before. lab originated stones. Am I saying
Oh.
that correctly?
That's one way to say it, yeah.
So tell us, which is really important, the difference between, it is a big difference.
Huge difference.
So let's hear that difference, because
Okay.
I was sort of surprised. I'd never heard it before.
Well,
I'm just a regular kind of gal.
Think about gemstones, like what makes a gemstone? Beauty, rarability, durability, and so what affects the price, supply and demand? What's an aspect of that supply and rarity? So if something can be made in a laboratory, it's not as rare, right? Even though it might be hard to
Right.
make, it's not as rare. And then they can mimic the chemistry of a
Exactly.
gemstone in a lab.
Almost like, exactly, right?
Well, not exactly, but you wouldn't be able to tell if it was a synthetic.
You couldn't tell. I had
Yes,
on
you
the side.
can. You can.
You could. You're an
Yeah.
expert, but
Well, yeah, but
all
that's
of
why you
us-
need to be careful if you go
Yeah.
buy something at some mine, you know, because
yeah.
it takes some ability to be able to tell the difference. But so something in created in a laboratory doesn't have the rarity and it doesn't have the cachet. I mean, think
No, of
about
course not.
our Earth is what, 4.8 billion years old, you know, and these gemstones, some of these sapphires in Sri Lanka are several billion years old themselves, and you're the one who pulls it out of the ground and it's rare and it's blue and holds it out. It's like a time travel. I mean, there's real rarity
I
in there,
agree.
the Earth's treasure, not
I
something
agree.
that's made in a
I agree
lab.
with you. So
Yeah.
how much of that lab originated or made stones do you think is part of the marketplace today? Must be a lot, because it's like the cheap stuff, right?
I think
mean-
you're thinking about laboratory gemstones versus different enhancements, are
Yeah,
you thinking?
laboratory.
Oh, okay, laboratory gemstones, there's a market for them, but I only deal in natural
No,
gemstones
yeah.
that are not from a lab.
Right. But do you think that that's a significant part of the market today? Is that a growing part?
I
or-
wouldn't think so.
You wouldn't think so.
No.
So if you were to think about your gemstones, what is the gemstone that you think is the rarest and the most difficult to find?
Well, ruby's the number one, you know, around the world. It's the more expensive gemstone that has, you know, history behind it, whether it's coming from Burma or some other place. But there was a find in Mozambique where they're able to produce some of these incredible rubies right now that don't require heating as most rubies do to come to the market, that some of them can even rival some of the Burmese aspects. But since there's more supply and demand again, so there's a little bit more supply, right? So it's a little bit of a time where you can find some rubies that are slightly more competitive, but still it is the number one gemstone in terms of price and desirability.
When you work with your clients, what is the thing that you feel you have to always teach them the most? They come to you sort of innocent, like, help me, I love this. But what is it you always feel that you're selling at them?
Looking at nuance, because there could be like little secondary colors or tertiary colors in a gemstone that could do a great deal to be able to affect the price, and color really sets the price. And what's the cut and what's the difference in nuance between one cut or another, or one shape or another, or where it came from? I mean, it's nuance. And to do that, you have to see a lot of material.
A lot of material. Now, you know, I see a lot of the fashion magazines are all talking color, color, color.
Mm-hmm.
Are there trends in the world of gemstones, just like there are anyway? Do you find that we're in a color period?
I don't think we're in a color period. I would think that this started, frankly, in the 90s and so forth. I think of it as a renaissance. You know, people now are aware of all these different kinds of gemstones.
it's
How are you
true.
going to go back and
Tansy.
just go back to white? But
Yeah.
one of the trends would be, like in China, they developed techniques to be able to cut really precisely small gemstones. So have you guys been seeing jewelry that has a lot of small round gemstones in it to be able to make blanket areas of color with like a painting?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about your design process when you work with a client. You actually design for them specifically.
Right, I do design. It depends. There's different types of design processes. Sometimes I'll design. I was kind of a dreamy kid growing up and so forth, and there's something about a gem that will just, it might sound goofy, but it will kind of tell you something that it's wanting, a certain kind of setting, or flashes come in my mind of ways something would look at certain angles, and then it comes all together. Or I work with a client to do a bespoke piece, and just talking to that woman, getting to know them, I think it's an intuitive thing. Things just start downloading in my mind, and I could start reflecting back to them things I see about them that I think we could carry forth in the ring. Or other times I designed a collection based on some poetry pieces in Mary Oliver's poetry. You know, things, that's an interesting thing to work through too.
So do you have a favorite piece?
Oh, favorite piece.
You've done so many. You must have one that's a favorite.
The meaning behind one that's a favorite. My friend Mary actually is wearing a ring tonight. Her father's from Chile, and her whole family, her kids, her mom and dad went to Patagonia. And her father had a massive heart attack way down in Patagonia. And it was like 17 hours to take him to the little hospital and more than that to take him to the one in Santiago. And he was really sick for a long time. So she had a blue tourmaline. And when she came back, and I know her parents, when we came back, we started thinking about it. And so we did a ring that really has family love in it. The blue tourmaline is like the icy glaciers in Patagonia at Torres de Paine. If you look at the sides of her ring, it has the actual silhouette of the mountains there in Torres de Paine. And in the middle, there's an area where I took a piece of wax and I put a blow dryer. I went over their house and melted the surface, and I had her kids, her husband and her and her mom and dad all put their fingerprints all in it, and I cast that piece. So in this ring, it's real meaning for our family. I'm getting chills with the fingerprints of all of them there, with the chili, the
story
silhouettes,
that's in that.
Yeah,
it's
and so that's a piece that really gets passed down through the generations that has meaning.
So that's an interesting buying gemstones and creating something that's really a sort of a family story.
Yes.
Does value also come with that over time? When you think about gemstones, is it something that are assets that you should invest in? Do you find that an increasing value? Is it an investment?
For me, it's an investment because I know how to sell them, right? I know how to buy and sell. But I think if I'm advising one of my customers, I would tell them to buy the finest gem that you can of a certain type of quality, and then over time, long periods of time, that's no doubt going to go up. But a consumer doesn't have an exit plan as easily as I would, so I think you have to use caution.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. Which is interesting because I read a lot of articles about gemstones. Is this something you should invest in? The stock market's up and down, land's up and down. Do you invest in paintings and gemstones? There's this interesting story. Investment grade, see if you agree with this, is a dirty term. While not illegal, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission frowns on its use for the reason they frown on precious and semi-precious. These terms have no meaning. This is one person's point of view, of course. Not only does the term investment grade have no clear meaning, it has been horribly abused by fraudulent jewelers. Are gemstones a good investment? And I think you answered it by saying it's the heart first.
Whew.
Right?
Yes, it is.
It's
something that has meaning and calls to you.
I agree. If you love it, you should do it. Interesting. So what are you working on today?
What am I working on today? Okay, I'm entering a contest. And I brought, I'm going to go up to New York and drop the piece off. And I've won some in this contest. It's a serious contest, but it was a jewel. And it has a big yellow gem called a Danburite from Tanzania, but it was from a really limited find. It was named after Danbury, Connecticut, where it was first found. And we put tanzanites on the side, and then red spinels and green garnets with it. It's just a beautiful, looks like a stained glass window, and it could be worn as a pendant. And then the way we made it is you could put it in a black cuff and a white cuff and fit it in there. So it's highly engineered, extremely beautiful, rare gems all together. It's one of the most complex pieces mechanically I've ever worked on.
So what led you to that?
My client is silly since her childhood. She liked those crests, like crests on blazers, like Ralph Lauren and so forth. And she just really liked that idea. And we had been working together for many years, and something just sort of came together. She's right there. Came together and put them all.
We're just talking about you. It's okay. We've got you head to toe covered here.
Put them all together in an unusual way, and away we went.
So I'm going to ask you a personal question. I'm sure you've heard of this. Have you ever heard of the stone moissanite?
Yes.
It's a meteor, right? Tell me about moissanite.
Moissanite is not a meteor.
Tell me what that is.
It's a synthetic gemstone. It's a diamond simulant. It's not a synthetic diamond because synthetic diamond would mean it have the same chemistry as diamond.
Is that considered a gemstone, or is that considered? No, it's not a gemstone.
No, it doesn't have the value, right?
Right, it doesn't have the value.
And with moissanite, it's more durable than CZ. It tends to have more of a yellow tinge to it, so I usually can pick that up. But
interesting. So what can you tell us?
Moldavite. Are you thinking moldavite comes from the meteorite?
Yes.
Yes.
That's it. Is that something that's a popular stone today? Not really.
No, it looks
it's not very pretty.
No, it's not real pretty.
It's not real pretty. I don't think it's very pretty.
Yeah.
I saw it on a list of things that were new and upcoming. So tell us, as guests here tonight, what would you advise us if we wanted to go after gemstones? How would we go about that? I would say I would know nothing. You could show me the lab ones. I'd have no idea. Obviously I'd use an expert. That's step number one. But what's the step 2 and 3? Have to use
to
it.
see a variety of things and learn nuance of color and your eye, like what it is you want, what looks bright, what moves you inside. And to do that, you need to see material.
And so you see material in finished state, not in sort of a raw state,
yes.
of course. It has to
By
be shiny
material,
and pretty.
I mean a lot of
right, a lot of
gems,
stones.
yeah.
And you sort of put it together. Interesting. But how would it would be the person that would guide us that the stone has the right value and
Right. So if I'm working with a client, I could show them things and I start showing him this gem, I would grade it off for this, but I like it for this. This gem, I like it for this, but the only thing that's pulling me back on it is this. And you know, it's just like being married. Not everything's perfect. You know, it's an interaction between all these different qualities. But
so are some stones harder to work on than others? Must be, right? I would think. What's the hardest stone to work on?
some gems are harder to cut, like some with cleavage issues and so forth, like kunzite is a hard one to work on. Some people have a lot of problems setting certain kinds of gemstones and crack them. I haven't had that yet, but I've been doing it 25 years and I have good setters.
Are there certain stones that you think in certain regions are becoming more rarefied because of what's happening in the regions or because of the geology?
Yeah, there's a gemstone from, first was found at Tourmaline in the 80s in the state of Paraíba in Brazil. It's electric neon blue, blue-green, electric, like Las Vegas electric. And when it first came out in the 80s, we thought this is crazy. They want 500 a carat for this. I'm talking trade prices. But now, this is all played out. And for one that comes from Paraíba, they had found another find of it in Africa, but one that comes from Paraíba, you know, 100,000 a carat. I mean, it's tremendous.
Wow. And it's not made yet. That's your wholesale. That's your buying the stone.
Yeah. For 10, you know, like bigger stones.
Yeah, for bigger stones.
Bigger stones.
So what's the biggest stone you worked on?
You mean the biggest size?
Mm-hmm.
You know, these things have to be set so people could wear them. So I don't have people wearing big 200 carat things, but I did some recutting on a tanzanite that was 50 carats and set really simply in a necklace, and it just focuses on the magnificent color in that gem and that magnificent cut. But you know, some gems are, like a 5 carat ruby is big, you know?
Yeah.
So it varies by what kind of gem you're talking about, what's big.
Now you've been coming to the Golden Door for years.
Yeah.
You're such a good
Since
friend
the
of
80s,
ours.
yeah.
Since the 80s.
Yes.
You must see a lot of changes as you come to the Golden Door.
And myself as well.
Right?
Yes.
That's good though.
Yes.
We grow. There's one thing we always do at the end of every single speaker series, which is the most important part, I think, of the speaker series. And that is we ask our speakers to give our guest a real golden nugget that they could take with them. I mean, not a real one, you know, not like a not like a gemstone.
Or a sapphire.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We would all like that. Yes, I'll be staying behind too. No, but we want to, you know, we've had so many incredible, right, Cindy, incredible golden nuggets. I mean, stuff like people go, oh my gosh. What would be the golden nugget you could gift to our guests? It's not stones, don't worry. It's something that, a piece of knowledge that we could take away, and the next time we look at stones or we think that we're ready to do that family heirloom, we're going to think of you and what you advised us.
It's simple and it's not necessarily just related to gemstones, but Dante said, beauty encourages the soul to act. And all of beauty does that, whether it's a beautiful gemstone glistening in the light on your hand or worn on your throat, or it's the camellia blossoms as you cross the bridge, or if it's the way that your yukata robe feels next to your skin. Beauty does something to our soul and it's necessary, it's not superfluous.
Beauty is necessary. That's what we're going to get to take away. Thank you so much. I encourage everybody during the week, while you're here, stop by and see Cynthia. She is in our boutique with Hilda, and it'll be fun, really fun. And thank you so much for being here since the 80s, my gosh, since the 80s. And I hope you learned something. I didn't know about labs, so I learned something.